All right, everybody, here it is. It is time for the Dark Fina review. Normally, I do previews for a lot of different characters, but this time I'm pretty damn certain about what I want to say, my feelings on this character, and everything to do with it. So let's get right into it. Get rid of the text for a minute because that will come back during the summary phase. But why this music? Well, I think that anybody who doesn't get this character, especially very certain accounts, are going to be very, very salty about this one. Because Dark Fina, there's no two ways about it. She is just a absolutely fantastic character from top to bottom. This character has so much versatility. I think she will be incredibly useful, not only in PvP settings, but PvE. I think that mage teams absolutely want this character. And last but not least, it's just another strong get dark element. So where should we start? I guess we're going to take a little bit of a look at her kit. Let's take a look at, of course, the wonderful summon animations. These things looking just fantastic as always. And this one, snakes. Lots and lots and lots of snakes. Pretty cool to see Dark Fina realized in 3D here. But let's get through some initial values, shall we? Because you can see her base stats here, and you can take it into account however you want that. But TMRs are useful, right? I mean, you might want to even build this with runes. I know globalers hate runes, but here we have a HP, spirit, aim, and quickness too. And all four of these things are actually really important for this character. So it's a good TMR statted for her, and I think it's actually decent for other mages too. Matter of fact, this might even be one that I'm just going to say is one of the great TMRs. I only say that because at the moment I don't have it, so I'm a little jealous. First of all, 3 turns magic resistance penetration of 40. Now, there's so many reasons why this is just good for every mage that effectively would ever want to equip this. This boosts damage and helps deal with magic tanks. It's just a buff. You can use this thing twice. It costs 24 TP, but it also decreases skill activation time for both attack and non-attack based skills. Absolutely fantastic. Like so many characters out there who have problems with casting time, this TMR is just great for them. It's also a huge reduction by 350 when fully maxed out. I mean, combine that with just spirit penetration. You can throw this on Era, for example, and she's going to be way better because of this. But there are so many mages, past, present, and future, that will love this TMR. So I felt meh on a lot of different TMRs lately. I do not feel meh about this at all. This is just great for mages across the board. So we've seen her TMR. We're going to head over now, jump into a map. We'll go into one of the newer farm maps, a little bit more difficult this time. Let's go right. We'll do this one because I have actually a plan for this. Also, just before we continue, this video is sponsored by nothing. No, that's not the real reason I'm pausing this. I would also like to make a special mention of the fact that I'm doing a separate video for the new MR character, and it should not be missed because he is also fantastic too. But let's introduce our new lovely lady. You can see her here with the current equipment. First of all, her brand new rod, which has stats as so, but also has magic attack increase and reaction block. Really, really good competitive piece of equipment, and that reaction block goes a long way with something like Detective Leela. I mean, the two in combination can potentially just completely shut down reflex or any kind of magic evasion counter abilities. So this is a definite piece of equipment that you are going to want to get. Comes, I know, in magic and aim at least. Up to you which one you potentially want, depending on accuracy issues. But great weapon that you are going to be wanting to get. Also, this equipment and her TMR. We also have Bahamut on here, Ramu, and the Diablos card. So that should give you a pretty good idea of the general equipment that we are working with here today on her. Let's take a look at the stats. This is in a purely dark elemental team, not a mage elemental team. We'll show that in a second, but about 6,000 HP, good amount of TP and AP, 1,600 magic attack. Defense and spirit are incredibly noteworthy here because a lot of mages just don't get this kind of stuff. Here we have a defense of 22 and a spirit of 49. And I know what you're saying, Umbra, of course, the equipment is being a contributing factor here. And yes, it is. But what's interesting is that Dark Fina, with her passives that she is capable from her supports, gives her a good amount of options in building for a fairly well-statted defense or spirit-based character, or maybe somewhere in between. Honestly, it's just a really well-statted character. Taking a look at speed, this is one that I think is really important to note because base speed for Dark Fina is not super amazing. You will want to buff and enhance it with fast espers and fast vision cards, lest she be left behind by speedier characters. Not necessarily the worst thing, since a mage going into the front lines first is my worst nightmare for getting a high level mage to just go up and get herself killed. As for resistances, charm resistance and slow resistance too. I think that these are two really important ones to consider. Charm, because Sadali might be a character that she ends up fighting, or maybe Victoria, I don't know. Like, I'm just thinking off the top of my head some of the charm characters that have been popping in and around through content lately, and this is just solid. It really does protect her against some nasty status effects. The darkness one, I'm not super crazy about, but sure, it exists. Now, as you can see, she's also been built here to be pretty resistant against light off the bat with this equipment, and sword, magic, and shooting resistance with really little negative to talk about here. When you're fighting against light recently, it is just sword and it is just magic. And honestly, providing that Fina is just a, the character off to the side, not really going to issue. So great stats as you would expect for a 100 cost character. Now let's talk about her sub jobs, and we're going to be not glancing, I would say, over them, but I think it's pretty clear what each of them brings. You have 3 different paths for Dark Fina, whether you're choosing her main, second, or tertiary. Now, secondary job, Scholar. Pretty self-explanatory for people who have played the game. Defense buffs, being able to restore her own CT and decrease her activation, which will shorten casting time issues. Damaging abilities, but the major one, of course, is the Diamond AoE that is capable of restoring HP to itself with damage done. Basically, Scholar is a self-buff kind of very selfish route to take this character, but totally worth it. If you look at just the fact of a Diamond AoE to help her potentially farm, or for high damaging things where she survives because of an ability that we'll talk about in a second here, and then she restores her HP to full. She has enough casting time reduction that I feel that this is a very easy recommendation to be potentially run. But yeah, it's just really, really good, and I do think that Scholar is a strong contender here. As for her tertiary one, Devout, which provides, a lot of support, some healing, some buffs, all of this stuff. Again, really good option. This is the potential option you want to take if you want her to be more of a little bit of a support role. And you know what? That's fine. Dark has some really good characters like Joker and Leela to go in first, potentially take damage, or maybe Garvel kind of thing. Like, since Garvel has a lot of barriers, he could go in first. He's a very fast character. And then you have this character in behind, potentially providing support for Garvel for a bit before she starts kicking in the damage. An interesting proposition. But last but not least is her main job, which is what I would consider the nasty route. So if oh wait, I'm clicking on the my bad. So here we go. 2 abilities. First of all, an AoE damage, 3 casts on this, 30 AP apiece, and decent 185 mod. Nice. Nothing, to write home about really, but a solid extra damage ability. This one, on the other hand, is Rude, a single target one that it has a chance to inflict Petrify and Paralyze. Both two really nasty status effects that could cripple a opponent for multiple turns and just be really nasty. Interestingly, it's a 10% chance to inflict or Petrify for 1 turn, so it's not necessarily the exact Petrify that you're thinking of, but even Paralyze is just really potentially nasty, as I can attest, as it shuts down characters regularly. Now, into the main part of her kit, there's nothing to be sad about here. Let's start by just getting the obvious one that we need to talk about out of the way, her Auto Revive, and this is her job level 25. Interestingly, this does have a casting time on it, so it's not instant, but really feels kind of minor for this kind of trade-off. A 200% chance to Auto Revive, 20% HP regained, but if her HP is over 70%, it has an increase of AoE resistance of 40 for 3 turns for herself. So one of the things, you're basically always running these units. Tank, AoEs can potentially be a problem if this unit's wandering too close to the tank, which does happen in certain maps. This gives you a lot of extra survivability against those AoE. Not necessarily against single target, but hey, Auto Revive is there to bring you back and maybe help you win the fight. Alright, very nice little support skill. We have 2 other ones to talk about, so let's find it. And here's the next one, another single target buff that increases her magic attack by 5 for 3 turns, but also nullifies Confusion, Stun, and Berserk. 3 nasty status effects that can ruin a mage. Confusion and Berserk, obviously casting abilities, and Stun, potentially wasting a turn. A great little buff that also increases her magic attack. There's nothing much to say here. It's a good one. Next up, more of a AoE buff, kind of friendly buff. Here we have a magic attack of increase of 40, spirit increase by 20, light and dark resistance increase by 20%, all for allies, and last but not least is a bonus for herself, spirit penetration increased by 20. Now she does have some other sources of spirit penetration in her kit, but overall this is going to be pretty nasty and a really good start of the game buff. I mean, you're essentially giving light and dark resistance, dark against maybe opposing dark teams, light resistance against your natural enemy, and as you can see, we already have 20% light resistance from our current build. That will end up working out really nicely, just making us very strong against our count. But the spirit and magic is just great for mage teams, absolutely fantastic for mage teams and going against other mage teams. So yeah, really good support skills. From there, we go into attack spells such as Comet here, which is, 5 uses, pretty cheap, 185, but non-elemental, potentially giving her some ways around if dark just can't be used super effective. Does have casting time on it, but, non-elemental I think is a good trade-off to have this. Next up, this one, 185 AoE mod, double hits, but also 25% chance to inflict stop. Very, very good. Stop is just kind of nice, and yeah, really cool bunch of little status effect flavor we have going on with this unit. And I believe that takes us to our last ability, and this is the one that every mage has been waiting for. Obviously on global, a little less important because Ibarra exists, but even if, combine the two and just Celeste killers, right? Dispel Runic Shield for target, so Celeste's key ability, decrease single target resistance by 30, and a 165 mod on this. Interestingly, this does have an accuracy buff for her too. Does have a extra 30% chance to hit the target, which if you, stack some extra accuracy, which isn't too terribly difficult for Dark right now, seems just good at dealing with those pesky light evasion units. Now, as for her counters, I think her counters are the most boring part of her kit. Effectively, just counters dealing damage or potentially increasing HP to herself. So nothing really overly spectacular, but not terrible either. You might want the Devout one, which gives her maybe a little more chance to survive. Last but not least is a chance to counter all damage. And, you know, pretty good overall. As for her support skills, her main one from her main job, she only gets one new one, but it's enough. Spirit penetration by 40, spirit by 24, agility by 12%. You're always running this thing. And I think the other one you're running is always the Scholar defense and accuracy increase to counter those pesky light evasion units. As for her limit burst, dispels haste, dispels all buffs, 4 hits, and a 200% lock. Dark Fina is the real deal. She is absolutely top to bottom, as I like to say, absolutely crazy unit. Like, if you stick her on an entire mage team, you can get a better idea of what her stats might be. Just pure mage, as well as just overall. We can see she's got a little bit more spear resistance weakness here, and her stats have changed based on the vision cards, but still very, very powerful and a very character. So let's switch over to reviews. We're going to take a bit of a look at her first and foremost, just by removing everything. We are going to put what I would consider to be probably just a very comparable unit in terms of, like, if we were looking at a comparison between two characters that are really, really good right now, really strong. I just quickly brain. Yeah, I mean that one for flavor. And I don't know. We've kind of flipped it, but it's fine. So not the highest stats, but we're going to take a look and see how the characters behave. As we get ready to sum up this review, let's take a look at some footage. Unfortunately, as always, only get one use of this per day. Maybe do another video later after with some extra testing if people are very, very curious. But yeah, here you can see immediately that we have a little bit of a weakness as comparison to, you know, Dark Witch Helena in terms of her, what she's capable of doing. Immediately as well, the character seems to be kind of focusing more on casting directly into attack, so she does have a very offensive base. If doesn't look like she will be focusing very much on support skills. So this could be a problem, obviously, in in arena and whatnot. You're going to have a little more space. You're going to have a little more time to potentially cast abilities. And this one is just kind of the nasty approach, trying to use status effects and whatnot. But casting time is a big difference between how effective a character is in farming. And this is why I put Dark Witch Helena higher still in terms of probably priority for newer accounts. But for older accounts who are looking for PvP characters, I think she will be much better, especially being able to run buffs. Auto just for farm, maybe a little bit less. So let's bring up our final talking points today. She is a permanent unit, and I don't think you have to worry about rushing to get her necessarily. I think that she's always going to be in the pool, and eventually you will pull this on maybe a free or just off banner, since off banners, as we all know, have a much higher chance than on banners. The pros of this character: high-powered dark units just benefit her incredibly well when you look at Leela or Joker, but it doesn't stop there. You can put her on an entire mage team and she'll fit in really, really well. As for other things, just bolstering all mages with her support skills and damaging capabilities, but also getting around Runic. Runic is been a real problem for mages on the AP side for months, and I don't really care that Global has Ibarra. This is just another option for people to get through Runic, and that is valuable in its own right. Sometimes you want multiple characters to counter one really problematic one, so I think it's good that we're seeing another character enter the game that has the capability of fixing them. As for her kit, lots of status effects, lots of nasty stuff, but even status effect protection is really great. As for the other thing, slight spelling error that I'm just seeing right now, but I caught it. Autro re-raise twice. As you all know, auto is better than auto re-raise. Double casting of it is just really useful between guild battles, multiple guild battles and whatnot. But the re-raise does come with an extra benefit, much in the vein of characters like Astorium. And, just to re-sum up, the access to some of the best vision cards and whatnot from the Dark element mean that this character is pretty well complete, and you don't really necessarily need another Dark vision card for which might come out the following week. You just don't need it. Instead, you just kind of already have it. But I can see a few weaknesses that are potentially there. You do need to build this character for agility. That kind of handicaps a little bit what you are able to do for equipment. Doesn't feel quite as free as some of the other characters I've seen recently. But re-raise, while it is a very, very strong status effect, Astoria can counter this, and I don't know if you necessarily want to run Dark Fina with Sadali just to counter Astoria's. I mean, certainly could be, but is it really worth it? Have the mismatch of elements there? Maybe. They're both mages, and that's up to the player to decide if they really want it or not. But there definitely could be. Like, Astoria could pretty easily kill her, because while she does have a good amount of HP, it's not spectacular, and Astoria can very quickly and easily get over that kind of thing, with a second hit kind of just killing her before she can do anything else. So it is a pretty major concern for her, but you stick a tank on that team, protect her properly, and I think she'll go quite far. And she can just go into multiple places to support. She has Dispel. I think she'll be great in hard PvE content, PvP content, flexibility, all of this stuff. So yeah, Dark Majin Fina or Dark Fina, whichever one you want to call, absolutely fantastic character, and definitely should be a strong consideration for globalers who really want to run more mages in the future. But even I think anybody getting this character is just a win. So yeah, let me know what you think of this character. Did I miss anything? I don't think I did. I thought I did pretty good on this video. So as a reminder at the end of this video is sponsored by Nothing, so thank you very much for supporting the Nothing. And we'll be talking about the brand new MR character in the next video, as well as we'll be taking a look at the enhancements that have been given to Rain and Laswell in a future video as well. So thank you very much for watching. See you next time.